Oh my God, what's going on here? Look at this dirty thing. That looks familiar. Look at all the dirt and dust and everything on there. What is going on? This looks familiar. Oh, look, that's nice and clean, isn't it? Beautiful. That's what you want to see. Now, P0400 is what we're going to talk about, okay? We're very lucky. Some people know something. There's some regular viewers that know something. I'm just going to sort of just, without saying too much. Then the people that know, and the people that don't know. And it's going to stay that way, right? But have a look at that, right? Beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, right, now what I need to tell you about is P0400. Now, there's hundreds of thousands of these 1KDs in Australia. There's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, if not probably 100,000 as well, that have got the plate with a 7mm hole at the start of the EGR cooler. Happy days, no problems, works really well, helps to keep everything clean. It's a balanced result, right? Now, there's a few people, we'll say a handful, it's probably more than a handful because a handful's got 5 in it, doesn't it, right? There's probably a handful of people that I know of, but there's probably a few more handfuls out of those tens of thousands that have this issue, P0400, which the code means, what it says is that the EGR flow is low. It's too low. We're not happy with this amount of low flow, so it throws the P0400. That's what it's programmed to do. It's using a number of other sensors and parameters and factors to say, once it detects X, 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 and X, then P0400, right? So it's not exactly a sensor that measures the flow of the EGR. It uses other sensors, right? So it can be very difficult to diagnose when there's a problem at P0400. Now, we've got quite a few videos on the P0400, but this is the video for when it's a little bit harder and all the other things didn't fix it, right? So you've checked all your vacuum lines, they're all on correctly, they're not leaking. You've checked this arm in the EGR cooler isn't seized. I'm not going to go through it all those things. You can look up, we've got an EGR information playlist, right? Check it out. There's probably even another playlist called P0400. Check it out, watch all the videos, listen very carefully to the end. Now, on this vehicle, I'll give you a bit of a story, right? So years ago, it used to throw a P0400 every now and then randomly. Now, it's that random that there was a number of times it went for 8, 9 and 10,000 kilometres without throwing a P0400, which if that was happening, I'm quite happy with that because, I've said everybody should have some sort of scan tool. If you don't know what I'm talking about, AutoFix Australia, okay? Trevor Ryan, Dirt Road 4x4. AutoFix 3210 works on most of the 1KDs as far as I know. You can check with him and them about that. I'm not here to sell you that. I'm just saying that's the device that plugs in, works really well to read and clear codes. And if you're getting it every few thousand Ks, it's a good code to have because it tells you things are clean, it's working well, you've got a very low flow. But sometimes, what this vehicle did, it would do it, I think 1 or 2 times, it did it 3 times in a day, and it was like, wow. And that wasn't annoying because then I didn't see it again for 10,000 Ks, right? So it was very random. When it did it, it would do it a lot of times. So in more recent times, and I've got a feeling I know what's caused it now, but what we've done is, as a diagnostic, well, it's not really diagnostics when you're taking a guess, or when you're swapping things, that's what's called guess-gnostics or swap-gnostics. And that's what we've done with this vehicle. We've done quite a bit of thinking and guess-gnostics, which led to swap-gnostics, which led to a waste of time. So lucky nobody's paying for this except me. So where we're at now, all I'm going to say is we've replaced just about everything that could cause the problem. A lot of people get the P0400, some people went to Toyota dealerships and they got the EGR valve replaced, and guess what? It didn't fix the problem. But sometimes it's fixed the problem. So it doesn't mean there's never a problem with the EGR valve, but I've never seen a vehicle in front of me that's had a problem with the EGR valve, and I don't know anybody that has. And I know a lot of people that work on 1KDs. So I wouldn't be going to buy an EGR valve if I was you. Now, this is what I believe, okay? Because when it was doing it every now and then, I got to the point where I went, you know what? I'm going to bring forward a set of injectors instead of putting in it, what was it meant to be, 150,000 Ks. And 5 or 6 years I was going to do it. I brought it back to, it was about 4 years, about 100,000 Ks, something like that. we said, you know what, I'll put a fresh set of injectors in it since the pipes have got to come off and all that sort of thing, and we'll get the EGR cooler off and give it a good clean out. And we did that, and I remember the back of the EGR cooler, that's the back up this end here, right? Up there where that EGR valve, see the little gap there? Because we've got it open at the moment, right? I noticed that was quite blocked up, and I thought maybe this is something that's going to happen on some of these 1KDs once they get older, right? Things don't flow that well and they get a bit blocked up. Now, if you've already got a problem with your operation of your EGR system because of, I don't know, vacuum lines that aren't on, or seized, you know, this shaft here in the middle of the picture being seized, or an EGR valve being stuck, or anything like that, if you've already got a problem of some sort, then adding a plate or something like that could be what throws it over the edge, but it doesn't mean it's the cause of the problem, because there's thousands of other vehicles with the same thing that don't have a problem. So the plate itself's not a problem, it just reduces the flow a little bit. Okay, but if you've got an existing issue, the two combined together is what the problem is. So the real problem is the original problem. And what I believe is this EGR cooler inside there, perhaps, is a bit restricted, is a bit blocked up, okay? So, you know, that's what I believe, but I don't know. And obviously to remove it, you got to take off the fuel lines, you got to risk contamination. Even though this is fairly, you can see all the dust and dirt, we haven't washed it down lately. You can see the pipes are fairly clean, but it's still a risk of contamination that I'd rather avoid. So we're not going to take the pipes and everything off and take off the EGR cooler and drop the coolant, even though I like any excuse to drop the coolant to keep it that nice beautiful red colour over there. You can see it, yeah? Any excuse to drop the coolant. But we're not going to do that, because the risk of contamination to the injectors, taking off the fuel pipes, as we've talked about before. So the other thing we can do is check if this vehicle's got a plate in it, you know, check if it's got a plate with a 7mm hole, you know, wink, wink, may not, maybe someone's put one in there, right, you know, maybe someone's put one in there, maybe it's got the wrong size hole, I don't know, you know, you've got to use your imagination a bit, maybe it's got a 5mm hole or 6mm hole, we don't know who's done what here. But what we do know is, we've tried a number of different components, including swapping MAF sensors, MAP filters, EGR valves. There is some other components we can swap, but we've never heard of a failure on any other vehicle. So that's not where we want to go next. Where we want to go next is going, well, if there's a restriction in the cooler, that combined with a plate could be what's causing the problem. So what we're going to do here is, we're going to see if there's a plate. If there's a plate there, we're going to get it out. We're going to check the size of the hole. Now, we're going to try and take a look at the EGR cooler up at this end here, but I don't think we're going to be able to see too much in that gap there, but we're going to have a look, right? And if there's any look of any blockage there or anything obvious, then we need to take action to unblock that. But the combination of, so what we're going to do, we're going to slowly drill the hole bigger. We're going to go 8mm, we're going to go 9mm, 10mm to the point that it fixes it. And if we get to bloody 12 or 13mm, we're getting sick of this by now. I don't think we'll be sick of it, yeah? Thank you, yeah, 5 times, that's it. Anyway, then we'll take the plate out and see if that fixes it. Because what's happening now is, I haven't told you that part yet, regularly P0400, now don't get me wrong, you can drive along the highway for 100 Ks, 200 Ks, or not on the highway for quite a couple of days without a code, but quite regularly it will throw the P0400 every 20 Ks, which means it's fairly well most of the time not getting the flow that's acceptable by the programming. So we think that either increasing, we know it's not fixing the problem, but just to help diagnose the problem and to diagnose the fact that the problem combined with the plate is the problem, then we can then say to people later, so you know, if you haven't already subscribed, turn the bell on, because at a later date we'll have the results of this and we'll say, guess what, we just drilled it out to an 8mm or a 9mm or 10mm and that's what fixed it. Now obviously the real problem is the blocked EGR, the EGR cooler inside there, the flow, but short of stripping everything down to get that out, the other solution, the band-aid solution, is to make the hole bigger, which equals the same result. As long as you're on the edge of, as long as it's not throwing a code, as long as you're on the edge there somewhere, then it's not an issue. Okay, so I hope everyone understands where we're headed. One day, eventually, in another few years, this vehicle will have the injectors replaced again to freshen them up. The pipes will come off, all new pipes and everything like that. And at that point, we will remove the EGR cooler and have a look and see how blocked it is. If that's the case, Anyway, that's a bada bing. Just wanted to let you know where it's at. That's the next stage from all the P0400s we've ever heard of. I don't believe any of the components are faulty as long as you've got your vacuum lines on correctly, those things aren't seized, all the usual things we've thought of. I then believe that the EGR cooler could be blocked. I'll give you a bit of background. The reason I've come to this, there's been a few vehicles that have had cracked pistons over the years, and there's been a few of those vehicles have P0400 afterwards, okay? And a couple I've been sort of, taking note of recently. What's the history of the vehicle? They've had a cracked piston, they put a new engine, blah, 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 and then they put the plate and they've got a P0400 either then or shortly afterwards, and they didn't clean out the EGR cooler, which sort of says it's the blocked EGR cooler, because when you've got a cracked piston, you get a bit of oil going back through the intake, through the exhaust, all this sort of, it gets a bit everywhere, and of course it goes into the cooler and it does block up the cooler. So things are wet, all of a sudden a dry situation gets wet, and it doesn't take much oil. Like for example, we're using a K&N filter on this one, and it doesn't take much oil to be, even when you back off and the boost pressure, it goes backwards through the EGR cooler. At this end of the cooler here, it can get a little bit of moisture in it, so it doesn't take much for it to get blocked up. If it went a little bit further back, once it gets to this area, around about this area here, that's where it's like a radiator core. It's only, a couple of millimeters wide, so a bit of oil in there, a bit of soot, and then a bit more oil. Easy enough for it to build up and then reduce the flow through there, which is kind of saying, there's nothing wrong with any other components, I'm just not getting the flow. Now, it might be all right on its own without the plate in there, we don't know that. So this is our R&TU, remember, not R&D. We don't develop anything, we do research and tell you. So this is the R&TU. If you want to see the results, subscribe, turn the bell on. I'll try to explain it best as I can. If you've got a P0400, don't waste your money buying a EGR valve, because guess what, it's not going to fix it. And if you did purchase one and it fixed it, please put it in the comments, because even though there's hundreds of thousands of these, if there's even one or two that it did fix it, we'd like to know about it, and so would everybody else. Thanks for watching, guys. You know the deal. Catch you on the next one. See ya.